Hello and welcome to another video lecture from MrWatkins.com. This particular video is on meiosis. Now, meiosis is the process of forming gametes. And we've got a few vocabulary words to go through here. So the process of forming gametes. Well, what are gametes? Gametes are egg and sperm. These are cells involved with reproduction. Okay? Gametes fuse together in a process called fertilization. And we may have already talked about this particular process. So this is the joining of eggs and sperm. Now, what they form, what that egg forms and sperm form when they join is a cell called a zygote. Okay, now there's a couple of more terms that we need to go over here. And one of these terms is a gene. Now, a gene is quite simply a piece of DNA that is a code for a particular trait. So it's like a segment of DNA that codes for a trait. Now, you can have this special, there's another special term here. It's called an allele. An allele is just an alternative form or an alternate form of a gene. So here's an example. You could have an allele that talks about what's called hitchhiker's thumb. There's an allele that says your thumb is going to be straight. If you take your thumb and make a fist like you're going to hitchhike, see, my thumb is straight. It won't curve back. But many of you have a thumb that will curve back. That's the, I don't want to use the word norm, but that's the dominant trait, where this is the recessive trait. And so that dominant trait for hitchhiker's thumb, where the thumb curves back, is one allele. The recessive trait, where the thumb stays straight, that's another different type of allele. So allele are alternative forms of a gene. So let's move forward here, because there's a bigger concept, a concept that we're going to need, because eventually we're going to be doing some genetics things where you're going to figure out what the organism's genotype is and phenotype and what the probability of their offspring is, and that's all the genetics piece that we'll be doing next semester. So let's kind of recap, but I'm going to recap this using you as an example. So mom has 46 chromosomes. So here's mom. Give her some hair. She's got 46 chromosomes. She's got these 46 chromosomes. That's two sets. And we refer to that as 2N, or diploid. The N is the number of sets. And because there's two sets, 46 total, she's what's called diploid. And what do I mean by diploid? What do I mean by two sets? What I'm saying is that she has two alleles, at least two alleles, for every trait. So if mom is recessive like I am, then mom is going to have two alleles that are both lowercase, that say don't have hitchhiker's thumb. Now, dad, on the other hand, there's dad. He also has 46 chromosomes, two sets. So we refer to that as 2N. He's also diploid. Now, they're diploid in all their cells except for one. And one of those cells, for dad, is sperm. For mom, it's an egg. The egg has only one set, 23 chromosomes. We say that's N number of chromosomes. It's one set, and that's called haploid. Same thing for dad. Dad's sperm has only 23 chromosomes. It's got one set, so it's just N, and again we refer to that as haploid. Now, when egg and sperm join, we get a new cell. It's called a zygote, has 46 chromosomes. This is the baby. Here, I put a little face on it for you. This is the baby, 46 chromosomes, and we're back to the 2 sets again, or 2N, or diploid. Now, the baby has to grow up, just like you had to grow up. You didn't stay a single cell. And Mom, you grew up, you got bigger, you were given birth to, you were a little kid, now you're big and strong. And that process that got you from this one single cell to the big critter that you are now is called mitosis. That's the cell cycle part that we just got through studying. Now, how does this relate to hitchhiker's thumb? Let me change colors here real quick so it makes a little more sense. Hitchhiker's thumb then, well, if you have 46 chromosomes, then that means you're going to have at least 2 copies, 2 sets. So that means when you get an egg, you're only going to have 1 set. And we're going to use me as an example. I don't have hitchhiker's thumb. Both of my alleles are the same. So that means my mom, her egg, had an allele, and we're just going to abbreviate that and call it H. And we're going to use it as a little h or a lowercase h. This goes back to this dominance and recessive that you may have learned in junior high school. My dad also, he gave a little h allele. That's what was on the gene. That was what his part of the set was. When these two came together, and here's Mr. Watkins, I got my 2 alleles, one from Mom, one from Dad. There's my 46 total. This is just one of the many genes in this 2 sets that I have, little h, that told my body, that told my process in cell cycle here to make the thumb, but make it so it couldn't bend back. Now, maybe your mom had, instead of a little h, maybe she had a big H. And if that was the case, then when you get down here to the baby, instead of having 2 little h's, you're going to have big H and little h, your 2 alleles, and so your thumb is going to bend back. And of course, Dad could also have had a big H, and then that would give you 2 big H's here, and so the thumb would bend back, big H being the dominant allele. All you need to know right now is that the allele is an alternative form for that trait. So let's get through, or let's get into this process that we call meiosis. Oh, wait, but before we do that, I want you to think about this. If Dad was 46 and Mom is 46 chromosomes and everything but their sperm, how did we get this 46 down to 23 in a sperm? How did we get this 46, 2 sets, down to 1 set of 23 in that egg? That process is called meiosis. That's what does this. Okay, so this concludes the first video. In the next video, we're going to take up where we leave off here, and we're going to walk through this process starting with interphase 1 until we get to the very end where we've actually had those eggs and sperm.